Hello, friends. My name is Host Eric, host of Talking with Famous People, also known as the fastest gun in the West. How do you beat the fastest gun in the West? Well, first you acknowledge that they're not really the fastest gun in the West. That actually you get to a certain fastness level, and then that's as fast as you can go. Nobody gets any better than that. And there is a top to, to it. And the top is not that you can't continue to beat any argument, it's that you no longer are stuck to any argument that will allow you to be beat. And you're not the only one who can do that. Other people can reach that level too. So once you're not stuck to any argument that will allow you to be beat, you're unbeatable unless you agree to limit yourself through some sort of formal construct, in which case it becomes more like a strategy game. At any rate, how to beat me in an argument, if you were to do so, and it were limited in some regard, you need to understand the following things first as a pre-arguing point. Number one, why am I arguing? Am I trying to establish dominance? Am I right and they're wrong? Either of those are perfectly good reasons to argue. Or am I trying to get a decision maker to make a certain decision? Now, that's going to be a different kind of argument. That's not really the argument we're talking about here, okay? Because that's not an argument. That's a person who needs to be moved. That's different. All right, so against whom am I arguing? And why are they arguing? Same things. You need to figure out if you're the decision maker and they're trying to get something from you, then you need to understand that's not an argument. And if they're trying to make arguments, then that's not a good way to do it. But if they're trying to establish dominance or whatever, well, then you might have a fight on your hands, or you might have somebody who's trying to move genuinely thinks they're right, possibly too. So, okay, why am I arguing? Which claim or claims are in dispute? So you have to narrow that down. For this example, let's do the McDonald's is unhealthy. Okay, claim in dispute is that McDonald's is unhealthy. I've narrowed it to a single claim, and I've pinned whoever I'm arguing against to that claim that McDonald's food is unhealthy. So the next question is, what's our framework? What impacts are significant and why? Well, health impacts are significant. What kind of claim is in dispute is the only thing that matters. It's a descriptive claim. It says McDonald's food is unhealthy. There's not really any facts in dispute. Nobody's disputing that McDonald's food has preservatives. Nobody's disputing that McDonald's food has fat or salt or whatever else you want to say. But the point is that you fail to establish that any of those things are unhealthy, nor that there's something unique to McDonald's that means the compilation of those things causes a unique health threat to human beings. And in reality, the statement McDonald's is unhealthy or McDonald's food is unhealthy is a fallacy because it's an interpretation of a behavior and it's putting the description onto an object or a food item or something. So yeah, it's guilty of a category error. McDonald's food can't be unhealthy unless it's poisonous or something. Now, you might say that some subpopulations of individuals, typically when they consume McDonald's food, that's a poor behavioral choice on their part. You might say they're making an unhealthy behavioral choice. It's possible to say that at least. But that's going to be specific to the individual and their circumstances. If I'm somebody like me who needs a lot of protein, a lot of fat, and a lot of McDonald's, then McDonald's is very healthy for you. You know, I mean, it's perfectly fine. At any rate, the burden's not on me to say why it's healthy. The burden's on the other person to say why it's unhealthy. They're the one making the claim. They're the one saying McDonald's is different than everything else. So I might point out then that none of the impacts are unique to McDonald's. That other things have fat in them. What is it about McDonald's that makes fast foods fat worse than other people's fat? And what are the actual health impacts? And if it's so bad, why don't we see any impacts in the real world? And yada, yada, yada. Okay? So that's the problem here is we're arguing about a descriptive claim that's hiding the fact that it's really a normative or prescriptive claim. Really, the claim is you shouldn't eat McDonald's. Really, the claim is fat people who eat McDonald's are bad. That's really the claim. But that's not what's being said explicitly because they medicalized it to try to distance themselves from that sort of awfulness. So it's either prescriptive or a normative claim really underneath it, but they have to defend it as though it were a descriptive claim because that's their point, is that their prescriptive and normative notions about things are driven by factual evidence that, no, you shouldn't, don't stab yourself with that. Stabbing yourself with sharp objects will hurt you, is the kind of thing that they're trying to position it as, but it's not that. So they're kind of, they're reflecting their own internal biases about what other people ought to eat. That's the problem, right? Nobody's saying McDonald's is unhealthy because they're telling themselves that mantra, because they don't want to eat McDonald's because they don't like it or something, or because they think it's unhealthy for them. They're saying it as a advisory message to everybody else. All right, so predictive. This is the problem, though. They don't engage the predictive line of argument at all. They don't say, well, if, in fact, McDonald's were unhealthy, what would be the outcomes? People who ate McDonald's would what? Get fat? Okay, well, is that really true, though? That's what makes them fat? We don't know. People who eat McDonald's are amongst people who get fat, and people who don't eat McDonald's are amongst people who get fat, too. And there's nothing wrong with being fat, is the other problem. Hi, Cameron.
McDonald's all the time. I ate McDonald's this morning for breakfast.
Are you dead yet?
I'm not dead yet, and I eat more McDonald's than you would imagine.
I can imagine a lot of McDonald's. All right, so now let's go down to I'm going to finish this video real quick, Cameron, because this is actually my third take of it, and the last two both gotten fucked up. Let's talk about weighing mechanisms. So you've got to understand what kind of claims are being made, first of all. If it's a normative claim, it's a moral claim, then it's going to be compared against some sort of model, whether they know so or not. If they compare it against an overall cost-benefit analysis, they're using utilitarianism. They're saying, we should do this because it's going to have good impacts and overall. Even though it's going to hurt those people over there, it's going to have good impacts overall. Greatest good for greatest number. That's typically everybody's default framework is util. My default framework, of course, is deontology, which is not exactly deontology, it's a natural rights framework that it's a negative rights framework that allows for responsive violence to rights violations, which causes the forfeiture of rights. So that's where it differs from deontology, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, that sort of normative argumentation is important. If you don't understand there are two kinds of impacts, one of which is outcome-based and one of which is binary, off and on, then you're going to have some problems. If you say, well, it's going to help more people than it's going to harm, and I say, yes, but it's unjust because it harms those people who are innocent and takes from them unfairly and yada, 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 right? So in that issue, I'm saying is, no, we should prioritize the binary impacts. If you wish to do this good, do so in a way that isn't criminal, that doesn't harm others unfairly. So that's why I default to deontology, because utilitarianism, while it may work descriptively on some level, like that action that was already taken was overall a good thing because it had net good impact. It doesn't work as a prescription because even if you have those net good impacts, you need to acknowledge you have a responsibility to attain them in ways that don't unjustly harm others, or there's no reason to think you are anything but a criminal. So after we talked about all that stuff in terms of pre-arguing, in terms of framework and why, what are we actually arguing about, and yada, 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 how are we going to determine who wins? That's the weighing mechanism or criterion. Compare worlds. If we do what you say, the world's going to look like this. If we don't, it's going to look like the status quo. Or if we do what you say, it's going to look like this. We do what I say, it's going to look like that, which is better. Burdens. I don't even argue anything here. You failed to meet your burden. That's a good way to win arguments. If you say, if we can establish that the other person has burdens to meet, and they fail to meet those burdens, then there's no reason to even talk about any of the conclusions. People want to keep talking about the conclusions before they've actually established any reasons. I don't care if your conclusion is true. I'm not interested in that. It doesn't matter. What matters is why it's true. If you convince me that it's true, you've convinced me that your why is accurate. I do not need to see evidence that it is true. I'm not interested in that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you have evidence that shows that, yes, all these people achieve these benefits. Because if you can't tell me why, then you haven't linked to your thing that you're claiming is caused those benefits. And therefore, there's no reason for us to consider those benefits meaningful at all. You have to prove that your thing caused the outcome or strongly correlates with it or something. If you don't, then your claim doesn't stand. It doesn't matter what you do to show that the impacts actually exist. If you don't make the link, it doesn't matter. Okay, so another way makes them compare against the model. If you have the same model, which one of us better upholds utilitarianism or which one of us better upholds deontology? No problem. If you have a different model, then you have to have a framework argument. Prefer my model. Why is my model better? Well, I just gave you prefer my framework model as to why I prefer deontology over utilitarianism. And that's the sort of argument I'm talking about. Truth testing. We could just test the truth of this sentence as a claim. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that, but it doesn't involve checking any proposed impacts. It doesn't imagining what would happen. It's just about, well, it's like if you say we should do U.S. space exploration, okay? You could argue, yes, we should, and here's exactly what it is that we should do. And that would be one way to affirm it. You could also say, yes, we should in general, and here's why it's a good idea in general without proposing anything specific. The truth testing model is of the latter sort, and it says either that it's true in general or not true in general, and that's how we should determine the contest here rather than producing a plan of some sort. That in fact, your plan is not affirming this resolution, it's affirming something else. It's affirming the fact that the statement could be true if you got to say exactly how it got played out. Next, let's look at game theory. Game theory basically tries to take argumentation and turn it into a purely formal matter and not be interested about what the arguments contain at all. So it doesn't matter how ridiculous an argument is. If it's supported and substantiated and linked properly like it's supposed to be for debate, then it counts on the flow, and if you drop it, you'll lose the round on it. Even if your warrant is it'll cause the moon to fall into the ocean because the moon men will drill hammers into it. If it's substantiated and warranted, extended, and your opponent doesn't address it, it wins the round. I'm of that mindset myself, because to do otherwise is to mistake what argumentation is for. It's for keeping people accountable, right? More than anything else, it's about keeping people accountable. If you're going to make a claim, and you're going to say you have this belief, and that I should have it too, especially. If you're going to state that something is true, you're saying that you should acknowledge it's true. If you're going to say something is false, you're saying you should acknowledge that it's false. So when you make those kind of claims, in general, the only way that we have to know if a person ought to be heard and listened to, everyone ought to be heard, not everyone ought to be listened to. So the only way we know that they ought to be both heard and listened to is if their arguments can withstand attack. And that's why everything counts if you don't answer it. Blank slate judge is one who evaluates based on game theory, basically. I'm a blank slate judge. Case and theory arguments are ways that you can critique without actually arguing the claim in dispute. You say, look, I'm not telling you that it's a bad idea for the U.S. to spend money on space exploration. I'm saying it's a bad idea for you to affirm any sentence that says we should spend money, because it furthers a discursive failure that is common, namely that of assuming there's a we that can execute actions on behalf of the common good, even though we don't even agree what that common good is, and even though the usage of coercion to attain that common good, it runs counter to my default framework of negative rights. So that's the introduction to pre-argumentation. This is what you do in the pre-argument. Before you do anything else, you've thought this stuff through. Or at least you're ready to think it through. You go, all right, what are we arguing about? You don't say this to your opponent, necessarily, because you want to win. The point of an argument is to win, okay? It's not... If you want to have a conversation where we figure out the truth, and you want to have a discursive conversation like that, dialectic conversation, that's possible if we genuinely are working towards understanding something better. Most of the time, people aren't working towards that. Most of the time, people are working towards establishing their point. And so, if we're going to win, if we're going to fight, then you win. That's it. Fight to win. You don't fight to lose. So, no, you don't tell all your opponent. You don't tell your opponent all this. You just know it yourself and be prepared to use it to befuddle and embarrass them. Good arguments are you don't even know what kind of claim it is. That's a good argument, right? Don't tell them. You just say that. Make them ask. Well, what do you mean? They have no fucking idea. You don't even know what framework we're arguing under. Well, I kind of know what framework means, but I'm not sure. You don't even know the framework establishes the ground on which we're arguing. So you have no respect for the fact that we already established that ground is off limits, and you argue there anyway. Why would that be the case? Well, perhaps because you don't know anything about arguing. Those kind of arguments are good because they throw your opponent off. It's not necessarily responding to their points. It's responding to the fact that they're arguing them wrong. And that means you don't even have to argue. You don't even have to enter into the stadium where they're playing their game. You're still out in the parking lot arguing about whether they should be allowed to go into the stadium, right? This is an important technique because if you're still outside the stadium, it doesn't matter how many points they say they're scoring. None of them count. You're not even inside the stadium. And that's what framework's all about. So that's part one of how to beat me in an argument, as per Margie's suggestion. Thank you, Margie, for the excellent suggestion for a video. I hope you enjoy this, and I will do my best in the future going forward to teach in TJ style rather than utilize to beat people up in TP style. Thank you for watching.